Sinaloa, Mexico. A land carved by rivers and ruled by mountains, where the sun burns the fields by day and men disappear by night, where the church bells ring for weddings in the morning and funerals by dusk. Here, the law comes in two kinds, bought or buried. And survival isn't about strength. It's about knowing which one to choose. Dámaso López Núñez was born in 1966, not to the dusty rows of cornfields, not to the street corners where boys learn crime before they learn math. He was different. He wore clean shirts when others wore rags. He carried books when others carried knives. He studied law, not to escape Sinaloa, but to master it. They called him El Licenciado, the graduate. A title earned in classrooms but sharpened in conversations with men who spoke in whispers. Because in Sinaloa, a degree doesn't always open office doors. Sometimes, it opens prison gates. And Dámaso didn't go to prison as an inmate. He went as the man with the keys, a uniform on his back, authority in his pocket, and in his eyes. A man who understood that the walls meant nothing if you controlled the locks. Late 1990s, Puente Grande prison, Mexico's so-called fortress. High walls, guard towers, locked gates, a place built to hold the country's most dangerous men. Dámaso López Núñez worked here, not as muscle, not as a gun, but as authority. Paperwork in one hand, power in the other. And among the thousands of inmates was one name that carried more weight than the steel bars: Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. To most guards, El Chapo was a ghost in a cage. Untouchable, dangerous, something to keep at a distance. But Dámaso saw more than a prisoner. He saw potential. He saw leverage. Their conversations started small, casual words in passing. Then came favors. A phone call here, a visitor granted there. Luxuries slipped through security as easily as shadows through a fence. Cigars, food, comforts reserved for kings. Every gift bought trust, every risk bought loyalty, and loyalty, in a place like Puente Grande, was the real currency. By 2001, the foundation was laid, and when El Chapo rolled out of that prison hidden inside a laundry cart, no alarms screaming, no bullets fired, people didn't see just an escape. They saw a graduation, and they whispered, "The graduate gave him his diploma." When Dámaso López Núñez walked away from the prison service, he didn't walk into a quiet life. He stepped into the open air of freedom, and directly into the shadow of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. No uniform now, no badge, but more power than he ever carried with a government title. He wasn't a gunman. He wasn't the kind of man who stood on street corners collecting money in blood-stained envelopes. Dámaso was something rarer, a strategist, a chess player in a world where most only knew how to swing a hammer. He didn't lead from the front. He led from the map, tunnels dug with the precision of military engineering, routes that shifted like rivers, always one step ahead of the authorities. Safe houses disguised as bakeries, mechanics, even schools, every detail cataloged in his mind. Like files in a cabinet only he knew how to open. El Chapo was the face, the legend, the whisper in the mountains. But El Licenciado? He was the machinery behind the legend, the man who could turn chaos into a timetable, who could make a multi-ton shipment cross a border as smoothly as a letter sliding into a mailbox. And as El Chapo's power surged, so did Dámaso's. He became a bridge, connecting the old guard of Sinaloa's traffickers, men who remembered the days of Colombian bosses and handshake deals, to the new generation, younger, hungrier, armed with both assault rifles and cell phones. But bridges are dangerous places. They connect, and they expose, because every bridge has two ends, and both can be burned. January 2016, Los Mochis, Sinaloa. Before sunrise, Mexican Marines stormed a safe house, and the ghost of the mountains, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was in chains again. The empire didn't stop. Cartels don't die with their kings. But without El Chapo at the helm, the wheel began to spin out of control. The Guzman sons, the Chapitos, were young, ruthless, and hungry. They wanted the Sinaloa Cartel for themselves. No sharing, no negotiation. To them, Dámaso López Núñez was an obstacle, an old friend turned rival. Dámaso saw it differently. For decades, he had built the roots, greased the hands, maintained the machinery. In his mind, the cartel ran because he kept it running. And if anyone had the right to take the throne, it was El Licenciado. Old loyalties shattered like glass under a boot. The whispers became warnings. The warnings became bodies. Streets once ruled by quiet efficiency now echoed with gunfire. Rival cells hunted each other in daylight. Pickup trucks bristling with rifles patrolled neighborhoods like war zones. Families vanished overnight, their absence explained only by the silence of fear. Dámaso moved cautiously. He changed locations. He stayed off phones. But in a war like this, everyone bleeds eventually. May 2nd, 2017. Mexico City. Just before dawn, the thunder of boots on tile floors shattered the calm. Mexican Marines smashed through the door of a luxury apartment. No bodyguards, no gunfire, no chance. The man who had once held the keys to Mexico's most notorious prison now stood with his hands in the air, staring at the cold steel of someone else's cuffs. No escape, no laundry cart, only the end of the road. They flew him north under the kind of security reserved for presidents and traitors. Chains on his wrists, chains on his ankles, a chain on the chain, just in case. Destination, the United States, where the cells are colder, the walls are thicker, and money buys nothing. Dámaso López Núñez knew the math. He had counted years before. Now he was counting decades. A trial meant evidence, photos, ledgers, witnesses. A trial meant life in prison without the faintest chance of parole. But Dámaso had built a career on deals. He knew that in the criminal world and in the courtroom, information was the most valuable product. And so he made his final transaction. He opened the vault in his head. Out came maps, detailed down to the back doors and dead drops. Names, lieutenants, hitmen, politicians, even uniformed officers who owed him more than they owed the badge. Accounts, money trails that led from mountain villages to skyscraper boardrooms. And then came the moment that turned whispers into curses across Sinaloa. He agreed to testify against Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the man whose escape he'd once engineered, the man who had made him. In the streets of Culiacan, some called him a traitor, others a survivor. Because in the underworld, the line between betrayal and survival is drawn in blood, and often crossed in silence. Dámaso didn't flinch. To him, this was business, just another deal, one more move to keep himself breathing. But even he knew this would be his last contract. No more power to broker, no more empires to manage. Just a name on a list of protected witnesses, and a future measured not in years but in square feet of concrete and steel. In the underworld, loyalty is currency, and when the vault runs dry, even the banker sells the bank.